Yes, everybody, the music is back by popular demand. I got a request for it last time, so I made sure to bring the music back for you here today. Thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in. What a fascinating week of college football, obviously headlined by an epic Georgia Alabama game that does actually have some reverberations back around to the non-power two world, which is, of course, where this show originates from, right? I want to talk a lot about the Big 12 ramifications of some of this because, quite frankly, in a week where I get it, Georgia, Alabama, I'm not going to go so far as some have said to say it was like a different sport watching them play versus what you're seeing around the rest of college football and in the Big 12. And that is an important distinction that I would make. It looks much different, Georgia and Alabama playing college football, than everybody else in the sport. That's not a Big 12 specific thing. So let's leave that out, Big 12 haters. More on that coming in just a moment. But basically what happened this week is that the Big 12 acted like the Big 12, like what everybody expected the conference to be, what everybody said the conference would be, which is just totally wide open, fun, unpredictable. You have no idea what's happening. That's the appeal of the conference. Everybody build it up like that. That's what will be great about it. And now it happened. And it looks like there's not a runaway favorite like last week it looked like with Utah. And here come the haters. Here come the haters out of the woodwork. Well, the Big 12's doing what we thought it would be. Let's crap on the Big 12 and the playoff. And why do we have to watch a Big 12 team there? Best believe I've got a little something for the haters that are out there, of which there are obviously many. So I do want to talk about that. The general storyline with the Big 12 is very much so, like I just emphasized there. With the Utah loss and the Colorado win and the K-State win, particularly how those wins went down, not just the fact that the wins happened. Man, I mean, we've got a pretty wide open race where we're sort of back to, once again, like 7 or 8 contenders that we can talk about here. And you're not exactly sure where this is going. It particularly with what the hell is going on with Cam Rising. Again, Utah fans, we're all of us who are fans watching this unfold again. And it feels so similar to what was going on with Cam Rising last year. They've got to bye this week. We'll see. But yes, it is very much clear now that Utah is not the same team without him, much as we might have thought that they were at least close based on what happened last week to Oklahoma State. And oh, yes, I mentioned Coach Prime in Colorado, did I not? Colorado haters need to step up to the plate and at least acknowledge what Coach Prime and Colorado are doing, because I will admit, I have not even been a hater. I was just arguing with somebody in my comments, which, fool's errand. I shouldn't do that. But I was just doing it late last week about the Colorado thing, saying, look, I like Coach Prime. How could you not like Travis Hunter and Shedeur Sanders watching them play? What I don't like is the bandwagon Colorado fan that has not paid attention to college football, not seriously anyway, running into the fray and calling you a hater if you're not predicting them to go to the playoff. Now, just because they beat UCF on the road does not make them a playoff team, but certainly they've entered the contender conversation in the Big 12. Even the most ardent haters, I think, would have to admit that. And I can certainly admit that Colorado looks at least a half step to a step above what I anticipated them being this year, and they're getting better and they're improving. And that's what did not happen last year. They're acting like a college football program, not team, but a program would act throughout the season, and getting better and shoring up some of the things that have been huge issues for them. We are seeing that. So we're going to talk Coach Prime and Colorado here. That is my plan on the show here today. As you guys know, you are a big part of the show. You can be a huge part of the show. First of all, fill up the chat. Appreciate all of you guys who are doing so. But if you want to make sure that your question or comment makes it on, click the $ below the chat box. That's how you create a super chat. If you send me a super chat, it will get on the show. So if you want your question or comment to be heard, you've got something to say about your rival, you think I'm an idiot, you think I'm great, that's the way to communicate with me, is by clicking the $ below the chat box. Also, if you are not watching live, another great way to do it, and you can still be a part of the channel, and the conversation is to go to Venmo. It is John-Kurtz-4 on Venmo if you would like to get in touch with me that way. And that is where we will start here in just a moment. But one more ask that I have of you, totally free way to support the channel, is just to, one, like the video, but two, if you are a Big 12 fan, and I know we've got a bunch of people from Twitter coming in here to watch this now that I'm back, profile picture approved, all right, I'm officially a BYU Hall of Fame tight end, according to Twitter, which is great news. But if you're a Big 12 fan out there and you want Big 12 news without Big 10 bias, without SEC bias, without the haters having to frame in an ESPN article, hey, here's the Big 12 title race, but saying it's the race for who's going to get waxed in the playoff. If you don't want any of that and you want Big 12 news, takes the league seriously, subscribe to the Open for Business newsletter. OFBnews.com is how you can subscribe to that. OFBnews.com. Be the smartest Big 12 fan in your group chat and do it by not having to filter through Big 10 or SEC news or worry about getting your Big 12 news from a guy, again, David Hale at ESPN, who is going to frame it as, well, who is the Big 12 team that is going to get drilled in the playoff? None of that when you subscribe to the Open for Business newsletter at OFBnews.com. All right, Mark. Mark starts us off here. I appreciate you, Mark. Mark chimes in on Venmo here and says, I am over the injury tease of Cam Rising. His presence hurt recruiting other non-injury prone quarterbacks and steals valuable reps from other prospects. I hope I eat these words and they make the playoff. I'm a terrible fan, I know, but curious your take. Well, Mark, I would not call you a terrible fan for that, first of all. You are well within your rights to be very frustrated by this if you are a Utah fan at this point. Okay, so first and foremost, let's just establish that. Now, as far as the content of this, it's an interesting discussion and debate at this point because we're now, I mean, look, last year was a whole thing. They kept making it sound like he was coming back until he's shelved for the entire season all of a sudden. Now this year looks like a pretty minor injury when it happens against Baylor. Fan yells down to Cam Rising about it. He says, I'm fine. We have all the weird Vegas line movement the week of the Oklahoma State game when at first it seemed like he was probably going to play. They say it's a game time decision. Seemed like it literally really was. Same thing said this week about it being a game time decision, but then we find out afterward the decision was actually made like the day before. So you're doing the Isaac Wilson thing again. I don't know. Again, this is why you can tell the tone of my voice. I'm not a Utah fan at all, but it's very annoying. It's very annoying. As a fan, I can't imagine how annoying that would be. And at a certain point, going through 2 years of this now, you're like, look, I mean, he does exist, right? I had other people saying, like, does Cam Rising actually exist? Yes, he does. I watched the Southern Utah first half when he was just killing it. They were scoring touchdowns on every single drive. He exists. The team is very good with him, but how much longer can you keep playing this game? I would say, Mark, I'll put it this way. There is a bye week coming up here. And then I believe, is it Arizona State next for Utah? Double check myself real quick here. Yeah, it's at Arizona State. So if he is not playing at Arizona State off the bye week, then maybe at that point we are in the territory of like, look, just make it Isaac Wilson's team because this is too much. It has, I'm sure, hurt the ability for them to go recruit a different backup quarterback that maybe would have been a little bit more game ready. Although I actually would frame this to you, Mark, because I don't think it's the worst thing in the world that you're just getting Isaac Wilson more game reps now. I mean, he does look like he's got a lot of talent and a real future there at quarterback. So it may just be the best thing is going to be take lumps this year with a young quarterback and then be better for it next year. But I can understand how you'd look at it and say, man, like if we would have just known this was going to happen, or if Rising would have just moved on, we could have started a different era with somebody else, recruited a transfer quarterback. The rest of the roster does seem pretty damn good. So if Rising had moved on and you could have just recruited a different quarterback, then getting someone good out of the portal could have made a world of a difference with this roster. Now that we're here at this point, I'd probably just be looking at it like, just move it on to Isaac Wilson, be better for it in the near future. And it's not like all hope is lost. Look, a part of this is the win last week at Oklahoma State does not look as impressive after Oklahoma State continued to look just very mediocre at K-State. I mean, it was a 42-13 game until Oklahoma State scores a garbage time touchdown against largely K-State's second team defense. That win is not looking as impressive anymore, but still, Utah, even with Isaac Wilson, is very capable of winning out or taking one more loss and still being very much in the mix for the Big 12 championship game. So hope is not all lost there, I would say, Mark, but I think you're valid. Like where you're coming from, it's very, very valid. And if I were a BYU fan, I'd be sitting there thinking the same thing. Like, why couldn't we have just turned the page this offseason and gotten somebody? Because with the roster, with the clout of the program, I'm sure you could have gotten at least a decent quarterback out of the portal to come in there. But hey, it is what it is. And if he does play, there's a world obviously where he comes back and plays against Arizona State, picks up where he left off, and they look great. Could still happen, but I do think we're at the point now where it's definitely in like, I got to see it to believe it mode, because we've been playing this game for far too long. Michael, what's up, Michael? Michael also on Venmo, John-Kurtz-4 on Venmo. Appreciate you, my friend. Great to hear from you. Michael says, hey there, friend. I know it's futile, but can you help make sense of the AP top 25? Where's Arizona? How does Wilner still have Utah at number 9 while USC is number 15? Ooh, okay. I had not looked at specific polls. One voter didn't put BYU in at all. Haha, hashtag go Cougs, hashtag go Cats. Let me bring up the AP poll. Because I did not look at it specifically. I saw very quickly where the Big 12 teams were, and I did not do a whole lot of research beyond that. All right, so our AP poll, we've got Iowa State, now the highest ranked Big 12 team at 16, BYU at 17, Utah at 18. Very, very closely packed in there. And then you've got Oklahoma at 19, K-State at 20. See, who do we have receiving votes? Arizona just outside the top 25 receiving votes. They've got 106. Arizona's there. Oklahoma State still got 8 votes. Somehow Colorado got 1. I'm surprised that Colorado only got 1 vote after that performance at UCF. Can I make sense of it? I mean, you're going to get voters like if you really want to every week, like parse through the individual ballots of people, you will find weird things that make you frustrated and angry every single week. A part of the calculus for John Wilner, I don't mean to speak for him at all. I'm just trying to figure out where he might be coming from here, is just about what we just talked about, like the Cam Rising thing. Like looking like, hey, any team forced to play a true freshman quarterback right now would definitely find moments where they struggle. So if they have Rising, they are still the number 9 team in the country. Perhaps it's some of that. If they're not putting BYU in, because the AP poll to me should be more of a ranking as opposed to a rating, a power rating, right? You're ranking much more based on meritocracy, versus a power rating, just like sheer raw numbers, who would beat who on a neutral field. If you're doing it like a ranking, you got to rank BYU. I mean, there's just, that's really bad. That's very bad that somebody's not putting them in there. Of course, you have to rank them. The win over K-State alone, K-State solidly in the polls, beating them 38-9. Yeah. And they're unbeaten. You got to put them in there. You're being a total hater. You may not think that they are going to win the Big 12 title. You may think that they are due for another backslide, maybe not to the extent that they did last year, but somewhat of one. But you got to rank them now. If you're doing this based on accomplishment, meritocracy, actual ranking, you got to put them in. So I'm with you on that. Appreciate everybody chiming in on Venmo, John-Kurtz-4. Thank you there to Michael and Mark for doing that. Guys, I have to fess up to you, all right? I've got to be honest. I messed up last week. I am a man. How do I want to say this? I am a man of great dignity, okay? I am somebody you can trust. as all K-State fans are, as you saw by the Taco Bell beefy 5-layer burrito guy on the internet this weekend, we are men of our word. When I'm right, I'm going to come here and tell you when I'm right. When I'm wrong, I have no problem coming and telling you that I am wrong. So let's go look at this really bad take now in hindsight that I put out there last week. Did not age well. I specifically spoke about it here on the show. A harsh reality for the Big 12 right now is that Utah looks like the class of the league, even without Cam Rising. A lot can change the rest of the year, but it's not a good look. Well, what's not a good look is this tweet now 1 week later. We're always doing a snapshot in time on this show, right? So maybe by the end of the year, things will turn back around. Everybody else will have 3 losses. Utah will rip through the rest of the schedule unbeaten with Isaac Wilson. There's still a world where this could come back around. But right now, at this snapshot in time, it does not look very good. So I've got to fess up to you guys on that. I messed up. And the Big 12 is much more wide open than I believed it to be a week ago, when I still thought pretty highly of Oklahoma State, pretty highly of going into Stillwater and knocking the Cowboys around, sucking the life out of that place like Utah was able to do with Isaac Wilson last week. Looks different now, feels different, and I just saw Utah get kind of manhandled physically by Arizona. Utah fans will not like to hear that, but they got out-toughed at home. They got pushed around by Arizona, a team that, look, I will admit, after watching them in Manhattan, I thought Arizona was kind of soft. But they proved me the hell wrong at Rice-Eccles on Saturday night, man. They ran the ball, and they got after it on the defensive line as well. Like, Arizona impressed the hell out of me with what they did against Utah. And now that makes it seem like Utah is very much just in that same category of, hey, we've got 5, 6, 7, maybe 8 teams that are all kind of lurking here with major flaws, but that can also produce really great games. And it's very tough to predict where that is going to go. So the narrative that Utah is a step above everybody, so established that they can just plug this guy in and go and win in the toughest environment. No, we have new data that's been revealed to us this week, and it looks like this league is much, much, much more wide open. Especially when you combine it with, again, we already talked about the Cam Rising aspect of this, but we don't know what's going on there. And if you are confident that you're going to see a healthy Cam Rising playing soon, I've got a timeshare to sell you. Maybe he will, but I do not think that's wise to assume based on the entire history of all this. So it very much brings Utah back to the rest of the pack. Iowa State, in some ways by default, maybe has to go up to number 1 in the power rankings. But I say that as a guy who watched a lot of that game against Houston, and their offense made some plays at the very end, but they were not doing much. And if Houston had any semblance of an offense, which, boy, I love Willie Fritz. I think he's going to get it turned around, but they have nothing offensively right now. If they had any semblance of an offense, Iowa State would have been in some real trouble. All of these schools have potential fatal flaws, and they all have enough good in them that it's just a jumbled up mess. And it is quite literally right now exactly what people anticipated at the beginning of the year. Because remember, at the beginning of the year, not just the national narrative, right? Like Josh Pate said, the Big 12 is America's conference. And a lot of what he's referencing there is just like, hey, if you want like really fun football, a fun brand of football that's unpredictable like every single week, and you're going to find it in the Big 12. Everybody thought that the appeal of this conference will be that it's unpredictable and fun, and there won't be anybody running away from it. And even those of us within the league that are talking about the league on a regular basis and care about the league, we all said like, hey, well, here's like 8 teams that could legitimately win the league, 8 teams that feel like contenders. And now we sit here at the end of September, heading into the first wave of games that'll be in October next week. It's exactly what we have. Maybe not quite the lists that we thought we would have had going into the season. I guess really the one shift there would be what? You go Kansas swapped out, Colorado swapped in now probably on that list, or BYU swapped in for I don't know if you had TCU in there. I would still probably keep UCF on my list for right now, but it's like Kansas out, BYU, Colorado in, and bam, you've got pretty much the same list as what you would have had in the offseason. So, like, if I asked you who's your Big 12 championship game right now, I don't think there's a wrong answer. You know, I asked everybody on Twitter earlier today for your Big 12 hot takes heading into week 6 or post week 5, Big 12 hot takes. There's stuff all over the board, and I really can't scoff at much of it, you know? I saw like Zach, for instance, right before I hopped on here, an Oklahoma State fan, said Colorado will play in Arlington. I'm like, I don't know how hot that really is anymore. It would have sounded scorching to me last week, but Colorado's getting better, and they're getting better in the areas that are the real problem areas for them. And that's why they just like wire to wire looked like the much better team at UCF and beat them by 4 touchdowns. Like it's impressive. So you've got to bow down and respect them a little bit right now. I don't know if you ask me to pick the Big 12 championship game right now, like, dude, I don't know. I don't have a dartboard in here, but just let me close my eyes and throw a couple, and I'd live with that. I don't know. I think my contenders at this point, BYU, Iowa State, Utah, Arizona, K-State, Colorado, UCF. So what have I named off there? That's 7. Maybe Texas Tech. You know, winner of Texas Tech Cincinnati. I think it's fair to at least put there like on the fringes of it. That was a good game. Texas Tech's defense, I still has a lot of work to go, but hey, if they didn't have a pick 6 of Brendan Sorsby, they're probably losing that game. So they did make a nice play there too. I don't know who the favorite is, man. And I guess I should amend my statement. The only way you have a wrong answer on that is if you pick Kansas or Houston. Kansas and Houston, they are definitely out of that picture. Almost anybody else, maybe Baylor. But, you know, Baylor has been very competitive, had the ball with a chance against BYU on Saturday after just a dreadful start. And obviously, like, they should have beaten Colorado. Absolutely should have beaten Colorado. But we got a wild finish there, which is what everybody expected from the Big 12, right? It's what everybody expected out of the league. Wild, zany conference, unpredictable. We got it with Colorado, beating Baylor, and now Colorado is on the move. And we have had a team like Kansas drop 4 straight, but here comes BYU off to a 5-0 start out of nowhere that you didn't really expect at all. It's living up to its name. The problem is that's bringing the anti-Big 12 sentiment out. And I do want to hone in on more of that and show you guys what I'm seeing. And, you know, it's disappointing. It's definitely disappointing. But for now, we have a lot of super chats here. I appreciate all of you guys weighing in. So I am going to hop through those. We'll start with Matthew. I appreciate you, Matthew. And if you want to join the parade of super chats here, you can do so by clicking the $ below the chat box. Great way to support the channel. It will guarantee that your question or comment makes it on the show tonight. I appreciate all of you who do that. Totally free way to support what I'm doing. If you're a Big 12 fan, make sure that you subscribe to the Open for Business newsletter, ofbnews.com, to do that. If you don't want to filter through Big 10 or SEC news to get your Big 12 news, if you don't want to filter through Big 10 or SEC bias to get your Big 12 news, sign up. You get Big 12 news straight to your inbox 2 or 3 times per week. You got it 3 times last week. ofbnews.com is where you can do that. Matthew, what's up, Matthew? So Matthew says, great experience at Baylor. Friendly fans, nice clean stadium, efficient game day transit, and nice Riverview setting. Great host in Waco, even with apparent coaching frustrations bubbling underneath. Yeah, Matthew, I appreciate you weighing in with that. I have seen 3 games at McLean Stadium. Think about that statement. 14, 16, 18. Yeah, 3 games at McLean Stadium I have covered. It's a gorgeous setting. Obviously, the sailgating aspect of it is very cool. It's very nice, clean, new. I have nothing but good things to say. And obviously, the people at Baylor are very, very nice and accommodating as well. I have nothing but good things to say there about my experience. A little bit different at the old Floyd Casey, because in 2012, I watched K-State's national championship dreams go up in flames there. But, everything else, 14, 16, and 18, much better at McLean Stadium. But great to hear that report, Matthew, and I hope you had a great time watching the Cougs out there get a big win. Boy, they looked awesome in the first half, had to hang on, but you got to respect BYU, man. That is such a difficult spot. People may roll their eyes at it a little bit, but situationally in college football, you're coming off the massive home win, like upset win, where you drilled somebody and you get a top 15 win and you validate what you've done so far this season. You're going on the road to a team that should feel like they're desperate with their backs against the wall. A head coach, as you mentioned, who is definitely teetering right now on the brink of potentially losing his job. And you come out and just smack them in the mouth, put 3 touchdowns up on the board before anybody knows what's happening. That's a hell of an effort and a real credit to Kalani Sitake and company. So, Matthew, glad to hear it. Glad you had a great time. Browns and Beers. What's up, Browns and Beers? Thank you for being here. Browns and Beers says, won't lie, saying I did not watch the entire K-State Oklahoma State game. Am I too hopeful in saying I somewhat love West Virginia plus 5.5 in Stillwater? Don't bet, but still. It's a good question. My hesitation there, Browns and Beers, is just that the second that you count Mike Gundy out, the second that you say Oklahoma State is done, either as a program or within the context of a season, he is the Undertaker gif, right? Everybody's seen the Undertaker gif where he pops out of the coffin, like sits up. You think he's dead, you think he's gone, and he's back. We all did this last year. Anybody, Dan Le Batard show fans out there, if any of you are out there, whenever somebody would doubt Tom Brady and Stugotz would come in and say, don't do it. I care about you. Don't do it. That's kind of where I'm at on that, Browns and Beers. Like, I care about you, and I would be careful with burying Mike Gundy. Now, having said all of that, I did watch every snap of the K-State Oklahoma State game, Browns and Beers, and they had a chance early in the game. I will say that. They had a chance with 5 drives. They had 5 drives in the first half that got inside the K-State 40, and they got 2 field goals out of it. There was a fumbled snap. There was a missed field goal. Maybe it was 4 drives. Field goal, missed field goal, fumbled snap. So they had a chance to really take control of the game early, not dissimilar, in fact, from K-State BYU last week. They didn't do it, and then from then on, they were just awful. I mean, the offense couldn't do anything. Ollie Gordon couldn't do anything. He had 4 yards rushing after the first quarter. So they look pretty cooked, at least offensively. The defense, I just keep feeling bad for them. It's like they're getting nothing from the offense. I don't think they're great, but it's hard to really write them off a ton when they're just getting absolutely zero from the other side of the ball. I don't know. Alan Bowman, I like the guy. He was really cool to talk to at Big 12 Media Days, but boy, you get a modicum of pressure on him and the ball's probably going into the turf. I mean, it's just not getting where it needs to go. They will try to throw 50-50 balls up to those receivers, but K-State picked a couple of them off. It's not working. Something's not working there right now. I will say, Oklahoma State fans, after watching that game, I get now why I see my timeline inundated with frustrating fans frustrated with Casey Dunn, the offensive coordinator there, every single week. I understand. There was one series where he tried in the, not the red zone, but on K-State's side of the 50, he tried to turn Alan Bowman into Colin Klein, like 2 or 3 plays in a row. Just ran like back-to-back quarterback designed runs. It was like a QB power almost, it looked like, for Alan Bowman. Just like, I don't know what that is. Now, do I think it'll be a good game? Yes, I think that can be a very competitive game, and West Virginia is another one of those intriguing teams. I did not list them as a contender, but they're at least still on the radar because of getting that win against Kansas. So Browns and Beers, we shall see. That's a long way of me not exactly giving you a definitive answer there, but it's still just, I'd be careful anyone trying to bury Mike Gundy. Nate, what's up, Nate? Nate says, congrats to Matt Campbell on becoming the coach with the most wins in Iowa State history. Yes, Nate, that is correct. Win over Houston. Iowa State's defense, lights out as always. I could have told you that going into the game, that John Heacock was not about to get got by what the Houston offense is right now, and they certainly didn't. They were awesome. Didn't have much offense, didn't matter. They get a win. Matt Campbell is the all-time winningest coach in Iowa State history. Definitely deserves a ton of respect for that. The guy has been outstanding at Iowa State over the general course of his tenure. Saw some interesting, man. I saw Cyclone Larry. Shout out to Cyclone Larry. I saw him mixing it up with the Kansas fans a little bit, throwing it out there like, man, they tried to tell us Lance Leipold was better than Matt Campbell. That's an interesting discussion now. Lance Leipold had shot up all those offseason coaching lists, right? Where he was like up in the top 10 best coaches in the country. Matt Campbell started kind of cooled the last few years. A lot of ball left to be played, but we'll see where that's at by the end of the year. It could be very, very interesting. But Nate, thank you so much. John, I look forward to watching you every Sunday. You rock. Thank you, Nate. You rock as well. I appreciate your support, my friend, a ton. And congrats to your Cyclones, who are probably going to be number one in the old power rankings when I send them out in Open for Business, the Open for Business newsletter this week, which again, ofbnews.com, ofbnews.com to sign up for the Open for Business Big 12 newsletter. Lance, what's up, Lance? Thank you for being here, Lance. Lance, oh boy, Lance says, my Pokes, no quarterback and can't run block. Schedule kind of lightens up now, and the Big 12 is absolutely crazy, so who knows what will happen. Let's go look at Oklahoma State's schedule here. It definitely does lighten up because, you start with Utah at K-State. It's hard to get, at least on paper, based on the projected standings this year, or the preseason poll, rather, much more difficult than that. You've got, here's the problem. You got West Virginia at home, which I can understand how you say, all right, that's a manageable game. And you got to go to BYU. Have fun. Have fun with that. I can already see you got the late kick there. 9:15 Eastern kick, or rather 9:15 Central kick, which means it would be the 10:15 Eastern. You got to go to Big 12 After Dark in Provo. Again, Lance, I care about you. Much as I just said, I care about you. Don't write Mike Gundy off. I care about you. Don't write off Big 12 After Dark in Provo, my friend. I am a living testament to that. Okay. Then after that, you are going to Baylor. We'll see where Baylor's season is at by then. That's October 26th. That could be we're to the point where things are really off the rails there in Waco. You got Arizona State at home, manageable. At TCU, they beat Kansas. They still feel pretty sloppy to me, but it is a road game. Tech at home. I think that'll be tough. The way Tech's looking right now. At Colorado looks pretty tough. So, yes, it does lighten up from K-State, Utah. I don't know that it lightens up as much as we would have thought going into the year on paper. So we'll see. The real problem there for the Pokes, Lance, as you allude to, is, they got to figure something out with that offense, man. I don't know. They got Ollie Gordon 72 yards in the first quarter. He had 4 the rest of the way. They just can't consistently do anything with that run game, which is, that's really, really the problem. Bear Down Cats. What's up, Bear Down Cats? Congratulations on your huge win at Utah. Bear Down Cat says, Bear Down, John. Just when we thought all hope was lost for Arizona, they manhandle Utah. And that really is the word, dude. Manhandle them. I have a lot more to say about this game that I will get to in just a little bit. This conference has multiple personality disorder. It will be 2 to 3 weeks before we know who is king. Yeah, even more so than multiple personality disorder. I think it's just a lot of, it really is what everybody said it would be this year. It's a lot of teams that are solid to good and have flaws enough that you are going to get wild variance depending on home road and week to week where they're playing and what's going on in the situation. As it turns out, I think Arizona having a bye week to regroup and figure some things out, and Utah coming off of a tough road trip and a huge win, going into a second game in a Big 12 start with a true freshman starting quarterback and maybe more of a book out on him, that probably did play a role here in what we saw. But Arizona absolutely did manhandle them. So it's a good word choice, Bear Down Cats. thank you for being here. I have more to say about that game. I'm going to cut it like a little bit shorter here just because I have much more on Arizona, Utah that I want to get to later on. But congrats, Bear Down Cats. Congrats. That had to be awesome. Awesome to watch. Alan, what's up, Alan? Great to see you here, Alan. Thank you for being here. Alan says, John, congrats to your Wildcats who looked like the Big 12 champion. Kudos to BYU. Hoping Lance can pull the Jayhawks out of a tailspin. Not giving up. Coming to the Sunflower Showdown to win. Rock Chalk Jayhawk Allen. Well, who was I talking to this weekend? Somebody in the press box in Manhattan. We had that same conversation like, hey, you still can't overlook Kansas. Like, they are 1-4, but if any K-State fan is looking at that game being like, oh, well, we're going to kill them. Who has killed Kansas this year? Nobody has. They've lost a lot of really tight games. Now, at a certain point, do you lose the team, lose the locker room a little bit when you had the expectations that you had this year and you continue to lose games? Maybe, but I would imagine they're going to be pretty up for that game, right? And if the season's already shot, you can get up at a one-game scenario to go beat your rival and end a long streak. That would go a long way toward at least restoring some good vibes back to the year. So, yeah, that's not one that K-State can take lightly, but it's a lot of problems, man. I got to admit, I understand the frustration with the officiating, the block in the back call. Well, I guess, or the lack thereof on the TCU punt return. Like, I understand why Lance is frustrated, but I do watch that guy just unload on officiating every single week on the sidelines. It seems like he's never happy with that. And at a certain point, you got to just get your team ready to go. You got to play through that. You got to be better than that. We're not seeing it from Kansas right now. And so when I know Lance, I know I'm just taking one snippet from the press conference. I just was not super crazy about him saying, whatever, fine me. The officiating's bad. We got to do something about it. Like, you lost the game by 2 scores. Okay. Like, be better than that. And that won't be that much of a problem. They've got bigger issues than just a call or two going against them. That's the harsh truth. And if nothing changes there, Kansas is going to just keep wallowing here. And even just checking out some of the narratives I have seen from Kansas fans, I mean, it really feels to me like the number one thing that has happened is that they lost a complete all-star offensive coordinator. I think that is most of what's happened with Kansas. It has kept them from being a dominant force offensively, which just makes everything click into place. None of these games have been blowout losses. How different would it be if he were still there? I think it would be much different. I do. So we'll see. Alan, I appreciate you being here, and I appreciate your support of the channel as always. Payson Cougar fan, thank you for being here. Payson Cougar fan says, great Saturday. BYU wins and Utah loses. Hey, there you go. Great one for the Cougs. A bye week, then 2 home Vampire games in a row. Oh, is it 2 home? Boy, it's going to be tough for anybody to do that. I know we just saw the first being Oklahoma State. Then it is... Arizona is the first one. My fault. Arizona and then Oklahoma State. Okay. Arizona and Oklahoma State back to back there. BYU Arizona is a real interesting game. I love that. Love that. Really interesting game. And Oklahoma State, we'll see what the Pokes are going to be by the time they get there. But it will not be an easy one. Maybe it'll be a fun one. It will not be an easy one. Payson Cougar fan, congratulations on a hell of a weekend. And on your squad winning once again. Congrats, and happy to hear from you. Daniel, what's up, Daniel? Appreciate you being here, Daniel. Daniel says, just traveling home from Manhappiness. Barbara and I saw the Cats tie with UCF at soccer. Oh, okay. A little football going on at Boozer Family Park. So impressed with the Cats' big victory of the Cowboys yesterday. Also, I'm so happy with the Chiefs and the Royals and Omaha. Yeah, I mean, obviously, I'm wearing my Chiefs gear. I was at a Chiefs watch party earlier today, but man, Rashee Rice, dude. Rashee Rice. They're going to have to go figure something else out, a receiver. I'm not feeling great about that, but anyway. Daniel, thank you for your support. Congratulations on a great sports weekend for all of you. I am excited. Because of the Bally Sports thing, I have not watched like a lick of Royals baseball at all, and I can finally watch it because Major League Baseball does decide to put the playoffs actually on an attainable channel to get and not paying for a clunky app that is separate from all the other costs you're already paying to watch things. So that will be great. I am looking forward to it too, my friend. But I'm glad you had a great trip, and I immensely appreciate your support of the channel, as always. I know we've got a couple more here. I will get to those in a minute, guys, I promise. But I do want to deliver on this. So I told you the Big 12 has turned into exactly what people thought it would be before the season. Last week, I gave you the bad take that Utah seemed above the rest, even with a true freshman quarterback, and that's an indictment on the rest of the Big 12. 1 week later, that looks silly after Utah gets manhandled at home by Arizona. Oklahoma State looked awful in losing at K-State. Now you're like, all right, well, how much did that win actually mean last week for Utah? Clearly, this is a jumbled mess with tons of contenders all over the place. And with that, even though it is exactly what people predicted for the league coming into the year, exactly what everybody thought would happen to the league at the beginning of the year, we're now getting the haters. The haters are coming out and tearing down the Big 12 for what it has become. And it felt like it was like a dam of water coming, and it was, people just watching Big 12 teams play football. And then at the same time, watching Georgia, Alabama, and seeing what a great game that was and how many crazy high caliber athletes there were out there on the field. And like, man, why, if I compare that to the Big 12, like, why are we, Georgia and Alabama, to make that the national championship game? Why are we worried about what's going on with all these Big 12 schools? Feels like there's an element of that combined with, okay, now Utah lost. We all thought Utah was like a top 10 team. Now they're out of there. That's the brand we recognize. They've won the Pac-12 recently. They'll go run that conference. That's still going to be a high-level team in the league. Well, no. They drop a huge egg down at the middle of the 50-yard line of Rice-Eccles in getting pushed around by Arizona and losing that game. And now it's like, all right, well, there's no Big 12 front runner that we trusted as a top 10 team. And we're looking now at the fact that Bama, Georgia just looked like it was on a completely different level from what the Big 12 has. So now here comes the snark. Here comes the what are we doing with the Big 12 here in the playoff? Why do we have this? The first thing was David Hale, who's from ACC country, by the way, was writing his weekly piece on ESPN.com. I assume it to be weekly. I shouldn't say that with authority. I assume it to be a weekly piece where he's breaking down everything that happened throughout the week in college football. And this is how he started his section about the Big 12, right? May seem small, but this is exactly the type of stuff the Big 12 has to battle all the time. He drops in the race to see which Big 12 team will get smoked in the playoff, Week 5 appeared to be a line of demarcation. That's the lead. That's the lead sentence from David Hale at ESPN.com in talking about what happened in the Big 12 over the weekend. In the race to see which Big 12 team will get smoked in the playoff. That was the lead. Okay. Well, let's digest that for a moment. Everybody let that sink in. Now, the Big 12 will be playing potentially a Georgia or an Alabama in what will likely be the only team from the Big 12 playing in the playoffs first game, a 4-5 matchup, because I don't think right now it's looking very likely at all that you're going to have a Big 12 at-large team that gets in the field. Could still develop that way, but right now I would say it's definitely less likely than more likely. So you're thinking about a 4-5 game. And he's saying, hey, 5 seed is going to be the best of the best from the Big 10 or SEC that don't actually win the league. That could be one of those teams that played in Bama or Georgia. So I'm just going to throw out there, in the race to see which Big 12 team will get smoked in the playoff, Week 5 appeared to be a line of demarcation. Like, okay. Thanks, David, for that one. First of all, cheap shot. Second of all, the problem that I really have with this is that it is not a uniquely Big 12 characteristic that they're not on the same level as like Bama, Georgia, Ohio State, Texas, which appear to be really like the top crust of the sport. I don't know that I've seen enough to trust Oregon so far this year to throw them in that group either. It's like everybody else has had major flaws and major problems. Why are we singling out the Big 12 here to just take a dump on the Big 12? We got the same thing from Brandon Walker, who has a popular college football following, a Barstool guy. Brandon Walker had this to say: Utah, K-State, Iowa State, Colorado, BYU, Texas Tech, Arizona, UCF, West Virginia, Oklahoma State. One of these teams will make the playoff and get a bye as a top 4 seed. That's pretty stupid. Well, thank you for that, Brandon. You probably don't need me to tell you that he is somebody that's based in SEC country, sharing that opinion. Now, I will also say in his defense, he's somebody that does pay a lot of attention to what's going on in the entirety of the sport. Okay, I will give him credit for that. But I definitely bristle at the way that is framed up. Because here's the thing. Look, if he wants to say that the entire point of that tweet is about the fact that they will be a 4 seed and hosts, okay, maybe we can debate the merits of that point. That's one where I can at least come to the table with you. But if it's about one of those teams being included in the playoff, then if that's your opinion and that's your take, you need to just go break off and have the Big Ten SEC Invitational and do that at the end of the year and do your own version of that. Make whatever playoff money or TV money you're going to make from that. Everybody else will do their thing. And then come back to me in 10 years when you are not getting the money that you want with the next deal because you've lost so much interest from 50 or 60% of the country that's now been cut out from the actual championship of the sport. That's what you need to do if that's going to be the real feeling about this, about the league actually being included at all. And the point that I would make to really supplement that is, again, if you are not at this moment Texas, Ohio State, Bama, Georgia, you're in the same boat as everybody else in the Big 12, dude. Ole Miss, playoff team, right? For sure. Lane Kiffin, they spent exorbitant amounts of money in the transfer portal and put together a great roster. Everybody loves up Lane Kiffin. Oh, wait. They just lost at home to Kentucky this weekend. I assume that many of you saw that. Ole Miss lost at home to Kentucky, okay? The same Mark Stoops team that got woodshedded by South Carolina. Ole Miss, very flawed. Very, very flawed. Losing a home game to Kentucky. Penn State, they're assumed to be a playoff team, a team that could be in that range from the Big Ten. Illinois is giving them a dogfight at home on Saturday. Bowling Green gave them a total dogfight in a home game earlier this year. They are very flawed. Now, yes, they have Andy Kotelnicki, who I think is absolutely excellent, and their offense has gotten better, but they're not running and hiding from anybody right now. You're telling me Penn State, you're giving Penn State the benefit of the doubt just because of the logo on the side of their helmet. By that, I mean the conference logo that is there. If we're going to go into David Hale's specific neck of the woods in the ACC country, I mean, Miami lost the game to Virginia Tech, right? That very much so. How are you overturning the touchdown at the end of the game there? Miami lost at home to Virginia Tech after the hype machine really gets building to them. Now, they technically win it, but that seemed like a bit of a screw job there for Virginia Tech. And yeah, Michigan, I could go on and on with this. Michigan got a little bit of, speaking of screw jobs, got a little bit of luck on the offsides call against Minnesota there. We can go down the list with all these other teams. If you are not one of the top 4 or 5 teams, you're in the same boat as the Big 12. And yet this narrative gets attached to the Big 12. It does. And if the idea also is from people like Brandon Walker that are spouting that sort of opinion, if the idea also is, hey, Georgia or Alabama, one of those 2 teams will probably be the 5 seed, and they're going to go play on a neutral field, Iowa State or BYU or Utah or K-State. And why would anybody want to watch that? Okay. I guess I sort of get that, but if it's about the league being included at all, and not just about the fact that this is a 4 seed, then, go shove it. Like we can get out of here with that. And these are just unfairly damaging narratives to the Big 12 when everybody else plays basically to the same standard as some of these teams toward the top of the Big 12. They just happen to be in the Big 10 or the SEC and get to ride the coattails of those 4 programs that I just mentioned this year. It's the reality based on what's happening on the field. Now, if you want to talk about programs and brand value and all that stuff and recruiting on a year in, year out basis and who has a higher ceiling based on that, like, okay, fine. But, so many of these teams, Missouri, another one that comes to mind, has been unbelievably underwhelming so far this year. But yet, we've got to take our shots at the Big 12. We crap on the Big 12 for it. It's fine. Whatever. I do need to take my own advice here. I always advocate for, enjoy the regular season of college football. Don't always worry about everything through a playoff lens. With the expanded playoff, I do think that can be good in some ways because it's going to make you feel like you're more involved here, whatever, but let's not lose sight. The regular season is great. Always has been. Hopefully always will be for all the intricacies of weekly matchups and rivalries and all of that stuff. So don't lose sight of that. I'm probably doing a little bit of that here, but she got me going a bit. It did. It got me going a bit. I must admit. All right, let's hop back into some super chats here. Eddie Lozano, San Antonio Real Estate. I appreciate you, Eddie. Thank you for being here, my man. Eddie says, hi, buddy. My hair almost turned completely gray this weekend. I hope I make it till the end of the year. Great job on Big 12 coverage. Houston going to be a beast. The D playing hard for Coach Fritz. Well, thank you for that, Eddie. I appreciate your kind words as always. Defenses, they did a great job against Iowa State, man. The defense did everything they could to keep Houston in that game. They just, speaking of units that are getting nothing else from the other one, they're getting no help. They're getting no help at all. So I feel you, Eddie. I feel you on that one, but I always appreciate you being here, and I always appreciate your take and your support of the channel. If you guys need a real estate agent in San Antonio, you know who to call. Hit up Eddie Lozano Real Estate in San Antonio. Thank you, sir. James, what's up, James? Appreciate you, James. Thank you for being here. James says, really impressed with K-State. I've always liked K-State. I've always kind of hated Oklahoma State Gundy. Ooh, would love nothing more than for K-State to win the Big 12 and the Natty parity. Oh, James, coming right for me, man. Thank you for that. I would love nothing more than to see it myself, my friend. Now, I don't think this K-State team is equipped to really make noise in the playoff. I guess, we'll see. Never say never. We saw a lot of development for Avery Johnson, I think, from BYU to Oklahoma State. He looked much better throwing the football, which is huge. Absolutely huge for K-State. 3 touchdown passes for Avery Johnson in the game. But I think he needs more seasoning before he is going to be at a point where he could truly make noise in the postseason. But they could absolutely win the league for sure. I think that is in play. They belong in that conversation right now, no doubt. No doubt. So thank you, James. Thank you very much for being here. Kenneth, what's up, Kenneth? Kenneth says Texas Tech at Arizona is the best game in the Big 12 this week. Let's pull up that schedule. Cross-check that with what I think. Week 6. Big 12. We've got Houston and TCU on a Friday in Fort Worth. West Virginia at Oklahoma State. Baylor at Iowa State. UCF, Florida. Everybody licking their wounds a bit in that game. Did I say Baylor at Iowa State? KU at Arizona. Texas Tech. KU at Arizona State. Texas Tech, Arizona. All right, so in terms of spread, the closest spread there, which if you're going to judge game quality based on that, you'd have UCF Florida there. That's just Florida -1. I've also seen that as a pick 'em some places. But that game has definitely lost some luster. Had UCF just won, announced itself on a national stage, which with what I'm sure was a huge audience on Fox, tuning in for Coach Prime, big noon kickoff, everything that happened there on Saturday, I'd say you can definitely argue that one, because if UCF can then punctuate it by going in and smacking Florida around in the swamp, we've got a real story developing with UCF's season. That's lost a bit of the edge. So I could get behind Texas Tech at Arizona. Winner of that game is definitely going to still very much be in the conversation of Big 12 contender. Like I would say Arizona is there right now if we want to incorporate our preseason expectations, basically what they did last year, which is something that we have not seen Texas Tech do in a long time, which is win 10 games. If we're going to incorporate that and all the faces that they brought back from that team, I'll give Arizona that, being a step above Texas Tech right now. But if the Red Raiders go on the road and win that game, this to me is like what Arizona did last week at Utah. This is Texas Tech's opportunity to do that same thing. Validate the 4-1 start that you have. Tell us that it's about more than just the schedule. Tell us that it's about more than just the fact that you got Arizona State and Cincinnati coming to your building. Pretty favorable start there to the Big 12 schedule. Tell us that it's about more than just that. That's what kind of a game that is for Texas Tech. It was also a game that was chosen by Fox. Now, it's late night slot, right? You got Big 12 after dark there, so that's a part of it. The fact that it's on Fox might give it a little more oomph in terms of picking it as the best matchup. I guess what I'm saying here, Kenneth, is I think that's a reasonable enough take. That is a reasonable enough take. Ken, what's up, Ken? Ken says first TD looked like Avery decided to be himself. Let's see, first TD. Is that the one that he ran into like the right front pylon? There was one of those where he was like scanning, and I wanted him to take off like a second or two earlier than he actually did. He still continues to really, really want to always be looking down the field, but he did finally take off and run it in there. He had the long one to Jace. He had the throw on the run in the back of the end zone. That was to another tight end. Honestly, all of them were great. And the one that looked the most like special, like this is why we think this guy has otherworldly talent, was the one where he's got a defender in his face and he just runs backwards, circles around him, and then runs into the end zone. That very much video game looking. So he was a lot better. He was a lot better. He looked a lot better. So appreciate you, Ken. Thank you for being here. Cowpoke Ranch. What's up, Cowpoke Ranch? Oh boy, Cowpoke Ranch bringing it strong. Says we're so tired as a fan base. Gundy needs to go. People can't run from it anymore. We deserve so much better. It seems like a take that was coming out last year, not at about this time, about a month or two earlier after the offseason Oklahoma State had before that year, and then into the beginning of a really rough start in the South Alabama game and all that stuff. I would say the same thing to you, Cowpoke Ranch. I mean, it seems like about the time that you totally write Gundy off, he brings it back. Now, if you want to say things were hurting in a bad spot last year and he patchworked it together somehow, but it wasn't really a big, strong, stable foundation, and now the house of cards is coming back down. I mean, I guess maybe I'm done, because I really thought I had it pegged last year that Gundy was going to be down and out and the program was going downhill and maybe things had kind of passed him by, and he sure as hell figured it out. But I do get the frustration, right? The Casey Dunn frustration. I understand it. After watching that up close and personal, I get it. There is absolutely no reason that team should not be able to run the ball, but they just can't. Oklahoma State cannot run the ball. It is baffling, and they probably should not, Oklahoma State, be getting beaten that badly in Manhattan 2 times in a row, by the way. 48-0 2 years ago, and then 42-20 this year with a garbage time touchdown, making the score look a little better. So I get it. I can very much empathize there and understand, Cowpoke Ranch, where you are coming from. Eddie, what's up, Eddie? Eddie again says, I can see Coach Fritz laying his pieces in for next year. I think the Big 12 teams will be ready for the playoff. They will be comparative. I will be here every weekend cheering the Big 12 on. All right, Eddie. Appreciate that. Send that message to David Hale and Brandon Walker that the Big 12 will be ready for its playoff matchup. The hard part will be you're going to get the best at-large team in that 4 or 5 game. It very well could be somebody that we just saw play one of the most epic college football games in a long time, Alabama and Georgia there. One of them winning the league, somebody else having to come take that 5 spot. Maybe it'll be Texas. Maybe you're talking about like Oregon, Ohio State loser. I suppose all of that is in play as well. And by Oregon, Ohio State loser, I mean, like, I assume they play the Big Ten championship game, whoever loses that. So it will be very difficult. You also won't get the home field advantage there. It will be on a neutral field. So won't be easy, but I sure hope you're right, Eddie. I sure hope you're right, and appreciate you, Eddie. Cyclone Steve, will everyone in the Big 12 lose a conference game? I am pretty damn confident of that. Yes, I am very confident of that. I think it would be a hot take if you're going to say the opposite of that to be true, because then you're banking on BYU, Colorado, Texas Tech, Iowa State, Arizona, or West Virginia rolling through unbeaten. Out of that group, who do I think has the best shot at it? Nobody is my answer, but maybe just because their schedule seems so manageable, Iowa State. But even then, at the end of the year, they're going to have to go to Utah and then host K-State back to back. But they certainly could get on a real run, and then you start to build up. Can you get on like a 2022 TCU type of run? That, I think, would be the question for Iowa State. Can you get on a 2022 TCU type of like magical run? Maybe, but I don't really see any of these teams. There's just too many flaws. Like, there's too many flaws everywhere for everybody for me to really feel like you're going to get an unbeaten team in Big 12 play this year. So I do not think so, Cyclone Steve. I do not think so. And a huge part of that is, look, I thought Utah was the team that would go through and run the table there. And if there was somebody last week that I felt like would run the table in the Big 12, it was Utah. But, man, they got manhandled. I love that word today. They got manhandled by Arizona on their home field. I understand that it's Isaac Wilson playing and not Cam Rising, but they got manhandled. There is no doubt about that. There are 5 takeaways basically from this game for me, like 5 major takeaways after watching this. Like, first of all, to fit the manhandling theme, how about Arizona showing the toughness, the guts, I mean, quite frankly, the balls to drive down the field and score that touchdown to go up 23-10. I mean, it's 16-10 early fourth quarter. Arizona has controlled the game, but yet they're only up by 6. They need to put this thing in the deep freeze. The crowd is going berserk. There's about 10 minutes left in the game. The sideline reporter literally had just done a report about how loud it was and how even with her in-ear, she couldn't really hear the broadcast at times because the fans were that jacked up. They're smelling blood. And they think, all right, this is where we turn into Utah. We're not going to let Arizona win this game. Of course not. And then comes 3rd and 11. And Noah Fafita delivers a 35-yard strike on 3rd and 11, and then a 41-yarder for a touchdown in the back of the end zone that was just gorgeous. That is toughness, man. Noah Fafita has that kind of like cool, calm, collected attitude about him. That showed up in spades with those 2 plays and moving the football on that drive. And that, by the way, was all coming off of a Noah Fafita interception in the end zone. When they could have delivered the kill shot, he got picked in the end zone, and then Utah had drawn to within a score. Every reason in the world to think that Arizona would wilt in that moment, but they didn't, because in the scope of manhandling Utah comes, they just out-tough them in areas, and that was toughest moment of the game. Toughest moment of the game there is facing 2 3rd and 11s with the crowd at full throat, Utah with the momentum. You screwed up your chance to drive a knife through their heart, and yet you still are able to do it anyway because Noah Fafita is fearless and drives you down with an incredible drive, an incredible throw to the back of the end zone for the touchdown. So, man, it's takeaway number 1. If you thought Arizona wasn't tough, you better go rewatch that drive. And point number 2 here is, like I said earlier in the show, to be honest, I had developed a thought that Arizona was a little bit soft. I did. A little bit soft is not what you saw out there. That defense had 2 picks. They had 8 pass breakups. They had 7 TFLs. They were all over the place. Utah decided they wanted to keep challenging a probable first-round pick at corner. That was not going well. That was not going well at all. 2 interceptions, 8 pass breakups, 7 TFLs, 2 fourth down stops inside the 10-yard line as well. Huge for Arizona early in the game. 2 fourth down stops inside their own 10-yard line. Some similarities to the K-State BYU game there, I would say, when BYU held K-State to a couple field goals early. That was massive in the context of the game. Arizona did the same thing. Takeaway number 3 here. I thought Arizona was a real one-trick pony. I thought all they had was Teterow and McMillan. I mean, the game in Manhattan, that is 100% what it looked like. There was nothing else offensively that Arizona had other than to just force feed the ball to McMillan. And he got his, but it didn't matter because they didn't have enough else on the offense. Well, remember how poorly Oklahoma State ran the ball against Utah, to the tune of they only handed the ball off 15 times. They got nothing going. Ollie Gordon was under 50 yards. That same defense, playing at home, no less, behind the crowd at Rice-Eccles Stadium, gave up 169 yards on the ground to Arizona and 6.5 yards a carry. Arizona rushed for 6.5 yards a carry on Utah at Utah. Teterow and McMillan only had 50 yards. If you would have shown me that box score before the game and showed me that Teterow and McMillan would not be the leading receiver in terms of yardage for Arizona and that he would only have 50 yards, I would have said, no way that they're winning. Absolutely no way that they're winning. They need much more than that out of McMillan. But Fafita found a way to spread the ball around, and they didn't have to just be a one-trick pony with him. Finally here, last takeaway from this is just like Utah is far from infallible, which I went too far over the line last week in saying bad look for the rest of the Big 12 because of how good Utah looks, even with a true freshman quarterback. Incorrect. Only rushed for 2.9 yards per carry against the Arizona defense that allowed almost 6 yards a carry to K-State the last time they played. So it's about half. They got about half of that. Utah could not run the ball. They were able to run the ball against Oklahoma State's front. They could not run the ball against Arizona. That is a tremendous, tremendous compliment to Arizona and what they were able to do. Beyond that, turnovers, Isaac Wilson still having some problems there, not being able to capitalize in short yardage when they needed to on those first early drives. Utah has problems. Like, newsflash, Utah has problems. If they can get a healthy Cam Rising back, maybe they can ascend to the point where they have the ability to work through some of those issues more. Like, Rising gives you more of a chance to have a negative play, get pushed back 5 yards, and not have to worry about it as much. Rising, you're going to have to worry less about turning the ball over, but he is good enough at making that offense go that you can make up for some mistakes. Don't know that they really have that right now with Isaac Wilson, and he's also going to just make more mistakes in general. Finally, I guess here was the actual last, if we're going number 5 here. The number 5 I'm going to take out of this game is just total deja vu with Cam Rising. I don't know how anyone could feel really confident about any sort of outcome on that this year. I hope for the best. I hope the bye week makes all the difference and we can stop talking about this. But it just, when you already have, and for me, it's not trauma, but for Utah fans, a level of trauma from last year going through the Cam Rising situation, and now we're doing this again, and it's already the second week, and now we've lost a game. Very deja vu. Very, very deja vu. And the truth is, Utah is not on a level yet. Not on a level yet, like I had assumed last week, where they can just plug in the true freshman quarterback and keep it totally rolling and just roll through a conference. Can't do it. Utah is not there yet. We definitely learned that. Okay, this is going to be, we're getting close here, people. I'm doing a little extra show for you tonight. And I appreciate everybody who's here. We've got almost 1,400 people from Twitter. Glad to be back there. About 400 on YouTube. If you are a Big 12 fan and you want this kind of Big 12 news delivered straight to your inbox 2 to 3 times per week for free, not have to deal with Big 10 news, SEC news, or a story written about college football that's through the lens of the Big 10 or the SEC, you want it about the Big 12 for Big 12 fans, sign up for my Open for Business Big 12 newsletter. It's ofbnews.com to do that. ofbnews.com to get signed up for the Open for Business newsletter. 2,400 plus other Big 12 fans already have. So what are you waiting for, my friends? I would appreciate it if you do that. Appreciate it if you like the video. And hey, if you want to be on, if you want to beat the buzzer here, so to speak, as we head into the home stretch of the show, you can click the $ below the chat box in order to do that, to submit a super chat. Guarantees that it gets read on the show tonight. Also, John-Kurtz-4 on Venmo. If you would prefer to contribute that way, if you leave a question or comment there, I will kick off the next show with it. So you can still be a part of it there. All right, we've got more from Cowpoke Ranch. Cowpoke Ranch says, that's the problem. Gundy has made a lot of people just expect mediocrity instead of accept mediocrity instead of competing with the SEC like we should be on a consistent basis. Garrett Riley to Oklahoma State doesn't sound too bad. Oh, interesting. Okay. I would be very interested in the Oklahoma State offensive coordinator search if and when that happens, because Gundy does have that propensity to just say, hey, I know better than everybody else. I'm going to go pick up some coordinator, go find a Jim Knowles hanging out at like Emporia State or something, which I guess, would make sense now because his kid's playing quarterback there. But going and pulling someone from a lower level of football, I'd be interested to see where Gundy would go if they do get a different offensive coordinator. But I guess are you saying Garrett Riley is the head coach now that Clemson is having success offensively and Cade Klubnik looks like he's going? I don't know if I'd be ready for Garrett Riley as a head coach, but we'll see. Except mediocrity, I guess. Let's look at the Mike Gundy here. Oklahoma State year by year. That feels a bit harsh. Now I understand he's only got the one Big 12 title, but man, still, if we're looking back at the last 5 years here, you've got 27, 37. Previous 4 years to this, 37 wins in 4 years. You're talking about over 9 wins a season. I'd profess to you that that's a little bit better than mediocre. And once in the 5-year cycle, you rose up and won 12 games, including a Fiesta Bowl, and came within a yard of being a Big 12 champion and winning 13 games that year too. So, that feels a bit harsh. I understand the frustration. I get where you're at. I can see some of those things, and I was right there with you last year at the beginning of the year after South Alabama. I might just see what happens the rest of the season. If you're saying you need an offensive coordinator change, you need to get somebody else in there and see what happens with the program, that I can definitely get behind. I feel for you, Cowpoke Ranch. I do. Believe me, I do. Takario Davis is a stud, dude. Yes, Bear Down Cats. How many passes defended did he have in that game? I mean, every time you looked up, Takario Davis was making a play. Like Dave Fleming, the broadcast crew there, they were just like, they certainly were enamored with him by the end of that game. And how could you not be? I think that dude is going to wind up being a first-round pick. Arizona's got high-level talent. We said it at the beginning of the year. That was the book on them, and it is very much true here now, too. I mean, Tetero, McMillan, Takario Davis, they've got left tackle, right? The offensive tackle that's definitely going to be a draft pick. Jacob Manu, obviously Noah Fafita. There's some high-end talent on that Arizona team. Jake, what's up, Jake? Jake says, my son's high school football team played Isaac Wilson's high school team and beat them. The team said he was easy to get flustered. Utah is not the Big 12 champ with Wilson. They may, I think that's a pretty safe assumption. I think it's a pretty safe assumption that Utah would not win the Big 12 if Isaac Wilson is going to be the guy the rest of the year. So then we're just back to that Cam Rising question. Yet again, that seems like it will never, ever go away. In fairness to Isaac Wilson, I will say, to be starting for Kyle Whittingham, you've got to have a certain level of composure to you. That's the word I'm looking to. I'll say composure. Whereas, easy to get flustered here, may have been true back then. I think it's fair to say you've got to have a decent amount of composure to be thrust into this situation by Kyle Whittingham the way that he has. But I definitely agree with the last point. It does not appear that Utah would be good enough to win the Big 12 championship just with Isaac Wilson. I think that would be difficult. But maybe could get there. We could have the conversation about can they get there with that. Now, as far as who Utah would be playing in some hypothetical scenario like that, we've got to have a conversation about Colorado, everybody. We've got to have a conversation about Colorado. There are a lot of Colorado haters out there. I've said over and over again, I am not one of them. I picked Colorado to win 6 or 7 games this year. I thought they would be improved. I did not think they would be as improved as they are now. And the problem with all of this, I definitely want to get into the aspect of how so many people want to never give them credit, but also on the same token, by the same token, on the flip side of this is the fact that Colorado could have been done. You had the chance to put a knife through any of this discussion with Colorado, and it didn't happen. You had a chance to, it wouldn't really be final nail in the coffin, but you had a chance to really stave this off, and you didn't. And now Coach Prime is here. Travis Hunter is here. Shedeur Sanders is here, and they are gaining energy and momentum and becoming a better football team right in front of our eyes. As somebody who had them as a 6 or 7 win football team this year, they definitely look like they're capable of more than that to me now. I don't think it is likely still that they would win the Big 12 and go to the playoff, but they deserve to be in the contender category. For the first time this year, after Saturday's drubbing of UCF, winning by 4 scores at the Bounce House, they are very much in the contender conversation. UCF's resume did have flaws coming in. They just, who had they played? Great comeback win at TCU, but TCU has not been overly impressive to me so far this year. That had come into question. But man, I sure thought UCF would be able to run the ball. They couldn't, not to the extent that they typically do. Colorado held them basically 200 yards below their season average on the ground. You know what that means? You got to look carefully before you say this. It means Colorado's getting a defense. Colorado's getting a bit of a defense, everybody. That was the thing, along with the offensive line, that we really wondered about for Colorado. And what did Colorado do in this game? They played some defense, and they actually ran the ball a little bit. Now, it's nothing crazy. This is nothing crazy. I would not be writing home about this necessarily on its face in a vacuum. But when you've got Shedeur Sanders and you've got one of, if not the absolute best receiving cores in the nation, all you need is a little bit. To quote the great prophet 50 Cent, all you need is a little bit. All you need is a little bit of a run game. And when they rush for 128 yards, over 100 yards for the second time in 3 weeks, we're seeing progress. We're seeing progress with the Colorado running game. If you do that, it's enough to keep the defense back on its heels a bit, to provide Shedeur Sanders all that he needs to get those receivers plenty involved and make that offense really, really pop. So they're doing that. Check on that. Having Dallin Hayden back certainly helps, but Colorado's doing it with a bunch of different running backs. They throw a bunch of different looks at you, and whatever it takes, man, whatever it takes to generate a bit of a ground game, more than fine. Shedeur, I thought, was protected a little bit better against UCF. I mean, it's still there are times where he's going to be running around, and I don't think that's going to change the entire year. But I was about to say, the offensive line, they are what they are. But that may not really be true because, again, they're starting to figure out the running game. I think they're getting a bit better. And the same with the defense. They forced 4 turnovers. As I mentioned, they held UCF almost 200 yards below their season average in rushing yards. Hey, the defense is showing improvement. It may not be great, but it is getting better. And if you put an average defense with an average running game with Colorado's passing game, you definitely have something there. And they appear to be getting closer to that, which I did not think that we would see that kind of improvement. They need to sustain it. I get it. Totally there with you. But these are positive signs that if it were any team other than Colorado, I really want to accentuate this point. If it were any team other than Colorado doing this and they had the same rap sheet going into the year, the same perceived weaknesses going into the year, and they all of a sudden started to do this, we'd look around and say, hey, that coach is doing a really nice job. Like, they're coming around, they're getting better. But because of people's preconceived notions on Colorado, I feel like a lot of times we just don't afford the same ability for them to grow that we would with other teams. And I'm even guilty of that as somebody who, I would say that I was not an over-the-top Colorado hater. I genuinely am not. Think they're good for the conference. Coach Prime's entertaining. Want to see them succeed. I did not cut them the same slack that I probably would other teams and just assuming, hey, they'll get better throughout the year. I think it's because everyone thought, like, yeah, you know, I don't know. This still seems like kind of too much of a circus, and they've had too much transition and they're figuring it out one way or another. They're getting better. You have to acknowledge that. That's part of what I'm here to say today about Colorado. You better acknowledge that. Even if you're a hater, you better acknowledge that. They're getting better in the two areas they really needed to get better in. And that, especially after watching the Nebraska game, I think everybody thought, well, you know, here comes that word again, manhandled. They were totally manhandled by Nebraska. They're just never going to be physical enough on defense or in their running game offensively. Totally wrote it all off. Now it's like, maybe we shouldn't have done that, you know, in week, 3 of the college football season, or was that week 2? You know, hey, we shouldn't do that just a couple of weeks into September. Even if it's Colorado and you think that Coach Prime isn't that great of a coach, maybe it can happen. It is. Seems like Coach Prime knows what he's doing, and he's doing a pretty good job getting these guys better. UCF, missed opportunity. By the same token, missed opportunity. I thought that was going to be coming out party for UCF. Big noon kickoff is there. You're going to get a huge audience, people watching Coach Prime. The best game in the 2:30 window was on Peacock, so you're going to have people that aren't going to want to go there. They'll just flip on Fox and watch Coach Prime, and you get to play. You've got the best rushing attack in the country. You've got one of the best running backs in the country in RJ Harvey. You've got a chance to put that on center stage. You know, here's our guys outside Heisman shot, you know, type of campaign here for RJ Harvey. Get that rolling. None of that happened. Colorado controlled that game from the jump. Colorado looked like the better team all the way through. There was nothing fluky about that. They controlled the game, outplayed them all the way through. RJ Harvey finishes under 100 yards, 77 yards on 16 carries. Did have a 75-yard touchdown catch, in fairness. But that was not like the introduce RJ Harvey as total star to the world type of performance. Instead, it was confirmed for everybody that Shedeur Sanders and Travis Hunter in particular are absolute stars. That's what we're talking about. People are talking about Travis Hunter. They're talking about Shedeur Sanders. They're talking about Coach Prime after the game, not UCF. Massive missed opportunity there for the Knights. Hate to admit it. I've been high on them since the offseason. I really like UCF. I like Gus. They still need to show me something. They need to show me a little bit more. Nice win at TCU, but it's clear that they are maybe not as close to bona fide contender status as we thought going into that game based on the way Colorado was able to play there. And now the good news for the league is that you are going to get more eyeballs and attention on you as the Colorado hype machine will continue to roll. I said 2 weeks ago, going into the Baylor game, if Colorado loses, you may start to see some people really jumping off here. Actually, I take that back. It was the Colorado State game before that. If Colorado loses, you'll see people really start to jump off. The excitement will dwindle because it was sort of at a lull at that point after the Nebraska thing happened and they barely beat North Dakota State. But they go out with a really solid performance against Colorado State, and then they pull a victory from the jaws of defeat against Baylor. Then they go whack UCF, and now, I mean, this thing is humming. The hype machine is humming. It's going to be loud. The K-State Colorado game in 2 weeks. Both teams have a bye before it. It's going to be 2 4-1 teams. That's going to get a lot of attention. That game is going to get a lot of attention. It's in a crowded week of college football. I get it. But that game will generate a lot of attention, and people are going to continue caring about Colorado. And that's why if you are a hater, if you're a Buff hater, you should have killed them when you had the chance. For any fellow emo kids out there like myself, A Day to Remember has a song, You Should Have Killed Me When You Had the Chance. That's what Colorado is saying right now. That's what Coach Prime is saying to Baylor. Because had you just not given up the Hail Mary, win the game, don't allow them to A, win the game, but B, win the game on such an iconic play that everybody is talking about and watching, Colorado could have been much, much closer to down and out, but now they are not. They are very much not. Should have knocked them out when you had the chance. Don't let Coach Prime hang around and start developing a defense and developing a running game. And it appears that we are seeing some of that happening right now. So good news for attention on the league. Good news for back to Mike Gundy, who said at Big 12 Media Days, he understands we need eyeballs. Coach Prime brings that. Good news for all of that, but bad news for anybody that's going to be playing them the rest of the year and thinking about what it means for like a Big 12 title race. Because Colorado is now showing me that they have the capabilities as a program of building to a team that could make it to Arlington. That's what I'm seeing. Now, there are a lot of qualifiers there, and that is on purpose. But I did not believe that in my heart of hearts until I saw what I saw on Saturday with them outplaying whistle to whistle, start to finish, UCF at the Bounce House. Impressive stuff from Colorado. You gotta give it up for them. You got to give it up for them. Okay, let's finish off with some super chats here. Cowpoke Ranch. Anything short of a Big 12 title and a playoff berth is mediocre. The Fiesta Bowl isn't enough anymore. We pay good money to these programs to perform. All right, hey, that is certainly your prerogative to feel that way. I understand that opinion, especially now in the new Big 12, and you have an opportunity here to stamp yourself as the program in the new Big 12. That's probably another thing that makes it even more frustrating for Oklahoma State fans. Like, somebody needs to go take the crown, take the title as being the big dog in this conference. Got a chance to, and it looks like you're floundering a bit in your first year. So I get it. I would not come after you for that at all. I do think if, the Fiesta Bowl isn't enough anymore, it's the whole system is so weird and different now. If you're at the equivalent of an 11-2 season and barely missing a Big 12 championship and making it to a New Year's Six Bowl in the old format, whatever that equivalent is, whatever you want to call that equivalent being in today's day and age in college football, just a couple of years later, you get the point. I'd still hesitate at saying like that's not quite good enough. That's pretty darn good. But I get it. You want to be winning the league. You want to make the playoff. And that is totally fair. And based on the program Mike Gundy has built, Oklahoma State should be in contention for that every year, basically, in the league. They definitely should be. Locked On West Virginia. Appreciate you, my friend. Thank you for being here. Make sure you guys go follow my guy, Paul, Locked On West Virginia. Says, great job yesterday by your Cats. Makes me feel a lot better about West Virginia next week against Oklahoma State. Great job as always, my man. Oh, thank you, sir. I appreciate you, Paul. Once again, guys, Locked On West Virginia coverage, Big 12 coverage. Great place to find it there. Yes, West Virginia fan earlier asking, that was Browns and Beers, I think, earlier, right? Asked me about how I felt about +5.5 for West Virginia and Stillwater. Outside of the Gundy factor, I would feel very good about it because Oklahoma State did not look very good in Manhattan. And you can say, hey, they're going home, like that should make a difference. I mean, it will make a difference, but boy, they looked like crap against Utah the last time we saw them there at Boone Pickens Stadium too. So I think there is definitely reason for some optimism there for sure. So I appreciate you, my friend. Locked On West Virginia / Mountaineer Paul. Thank you, sir. Bear Down Cats. Travis Hunter is another stud, plays both sides of the ball and performs at a high level. You have to give him credit. Oh, dude, no doubt. I mean, if you're picking the Heisman Trophy based on who truly is like the best individual player out there, I don't know how you could watch the games and not think that Travis Hunter is the best player. I mean, it's crazy. They dropped that nugget in on the broadcast about, hey, they tracked him through a practice when he's playing on both sides of the field, and it had him at like 7 miles running. Now, I know people will say that about like soccer players in a game. They'll run like 10 miles or whatever. They're not like dead sprint. Like if Travis Hunter is moving that much, most of that is like dead sprint. You're sprinting for 10 seconds during a play. Like, that is an unreal amount of effort that guy's putting out and still just making insane plays. That interception that he had was crazy. Well-deserved Heisman moment, striking the Heisman pose. I don't think anybody should have any problem with that. He's the best player in the country. The problem is going to be, will Colorado win enough? Will Colorado win enough for people to really recognize that? And of course, he also doesn't play quarterback. But yeah, he's great. I've already got nightmares about K-State's defensive backs trying to defend not just Travis Hunter, but the entire Colorado receiving corps, which looks very good. Very, very good. James, what's up, James? Cowpoke Ranch may be referring to the fact that the Gundy-led program refuses to play Oklahoma. Okay, Gundy-led program refuses to play Oklahoma. Well, I wish Oklahoma State, I think everybody would be better off if they would figure out a way to make that happen. I would love for those schools to play. I mean, because to be honest, as rough as it looks for the Pokes right now, look, I don't care that Oklahoma won that game with Michael Hawkins against a bad Auburn team on the road. It's fine. They're still not going anywhere in the SEC this year and still very much have the look of a 7-5 team in the SEC. You might still have been able to beat them this year. That definitely does not look like some behemoth, some beast over there. It's a tough year right now in the state of Oklahoma. I guess I can get like, hey, it's the second SEC game that Oklahoma's ever played. It's their first SEC road game, and they get this win with 2 huge plays at the end of the game. But man, I don't know. Some of the romanticizing I've seen from Oklahoma fans on that front, like, yeah, okay. I get it. You're down 5 receivers, and you've got the freshman quarterback and all that. I do, but I don't know that would be instilling a lot of confidence for me in where the rest of the season is going if I were an Oklahoma fan, but you do you. Anyway, James, thank you for filling in some context there. Appreciate you. Appreciate all the Poke fans who have been in here and everybody today. Everybody, I'm going to give you one final reminder here. If you're a Big 12 fan and you want Big 12 and Big 12 news straight to your inbox 2 to 3 times per week, totally free. No SEC or Big 10 bias. No wading through SEC or Big 10 stuff to get to what matters to the Big 12. I will give it straight to you. OFBnews.com to subscribe to the Open for Business Big 12 newsletter. OFBnews.com. Over 2,400 Big 12 fans reading it already. So join the party at OFBnews.com. I'd love it if you'd like the video on your way out the door. That would be amazing as well. Spread the word about the channel. Spread the word about the newsletter. John-Kurtz-4 on Venmo. If you were not watching this live and you want a chance to weigh in with your opinion, you can do so there. Leave a question or comment with your donation. I will kick off the next show with it. Okay. That is about it, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. Lively tonight. A lot of fun to talk with you. Appreciate everybody's support immensely. Enjoy the remnants of your weekend. I hope you have a great start to the week, and I will talk to y'all soon.